Evening everyone, it's Jim here, just double checking that I've not muted myself like I'm prone to do. So welcome to our latest live session. This one's for AQA A-Level Business, and I thought we'd take a bit of a look at these pesky 16 mark open questions. We know that they're pretty sure that they're going to feature in paper 2 next week, and students have struggled with them in the last few sittings, and certainly back in 2019 when obviously tens of thousands of students sat the paper. So I know we've been working hard on these 16 mark open questions in the Grade Booster course and in the cinema workshops, but you can't get enough practice on them. So I thought we'd do a little bit of that tonight, if that's okay. Welcome if you're joining us in the live chat, and please do use the live chat to ask any questions as we go, and also to contribute some possible answers and points as we explore. I've got 3 mini case studies and 3 examples of 16 mark open questions for us to look at. And we'll go through them step by step, and in some cases I'll illustrate how you might structure a particular paragraph or response or conclusion to one of them. I've picked 3 topics that could easily be a 16 marker in paper 2. So I've gone with exchange rates, performance related pay, and outsourcing. I know quite a few people are asking whether we could do things like divorce between ownership and control and various other things. I'll make sure I cover all of those in our paper 2 warm-up, which we're going to be doing just before the exam. I think we're all good to start. Hopefully everyone's okay, and as always, please use the live chat to help each other, as well as give some feedback to me. Let's go to the screen. All good, and I do appear to be unmuted, which is for me is a first. So I thought I'd just quickly give an overview of these 16 mark open questions, and then we'll get into one of our 3 mini case studies. Don't worry, we're not going to be writing long answers. I'm just going to be asking you for suggested responses, and I'll take you through. I've had a go at answering, not the whole thing, but I've had a go at answering parts of these questions. The key thing about the open questions is that they are pretty likely to appear. Normally, there are 3 open questions, 2 in paper 2, the 16 markers, and don't forget the question 6 in paper 3 is also typically an open question. And what we mean by open question is the question refers to all businesses or a business or any business. And so therefore what you have to do, the question is inviting you to go beyond the case study that you're given. So I've put some examples on screen there, just of some 16 mark open questions that have appeared in recent exam papers. You might recognise some of those if you've had a go at the 2021, 2020 papers. That bottom one there, is selling franchises a good way for any business to grow? Well, of course, we know what the answer is with open questions, don't we? In some situations, it is a good way. In some situations, it's not. So that is the conclusion. But the question is, how do you write an efficient response in 16 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe max, to mean that you get a level 4 response and you can move on to do the rest of the paper. So let's explore what we mean by these open questions. So my understanding of what AQA are looking for here and the advice that they're giving, which I know is the advice they're giving, is that they want you to go beyond the case study that you're given, the case study or the context. So in paper 3, of course, paper 2, we've got 3 mini case studies. The last 2, there's typically a 16 mark open question at the end of each of those 2. In paper 3, which is a bigger case study, question 6. So we need to go beyond the case study to explore some other situations, but you don't have to use real businesses if you don't want to. So there's not an expectation that a top level response will make use of real business names, real business examples. If you've got them, that's great, use them. Don't write a book about them, bring them into the argument. But for example, you could talk about the car manufacturing industry as an example, rather than specifically talking about Nissan or Honda or Toyota. You could talk about, use the fast fashion industry as an example, rather than talking about, I don't know, ASOS or Boohoo or whatever. So if you've got real businesses to use, great, use them. You don't have to though. So it's not like a memory test for real life examples. So how do you write an efficient answer that meets the demands of the question? Because the challenge that a lot of students are finding with the 16 mark questions is that they're running out of time, and also they're writing too much. Okay, so in a way, it's just like every other answer in AQA. You have to unpick the question and then respond to it in an efficient way that meets in a way that meets the demands of the question. In other words, using exactly the same technique that we've developed for our 25 markers. Hopefully it went well, by the way. Paper 1, decent paper, wasn't it? And of course, the same technique works in paper 3 for all 6 questions. And the way we do this is that we take the case study and we deal with it first. So our first paragraph is we apply the question to the case study business, why it would be the case for the case study business. Then we ditch the case study business for our counter argument and we consider other situations, completely different industries and situations. So move away from the case study completely and consider why that would be the case, why it wouldn't be the case in other situations. And then we conclude. And as I say, we know what the answer is. In some situations it is the case, in some situations it isn't. So we'll see this in action as we go through this. Okay, so one or two interesting questions coming through on the live chat. One or two of them are even related to the 16 markers for AQA level business, which is fantastic. So here's our suggested structure. We're going to work our way through this for the rest of this session. Paragraph 1, we deal with the case study. Nothing else but the case study. Why it is the case for the case study situation business. Paragraph 2, completely ignore the case study. We go out to some other situations why it wouldn't be the case, and then we conclude. And don't forget, 16 marks and above we can include if we wish, because there are evaluation marks. In 16 we can include our pie sentence. You don't have to evaluate as you go. It is quite an effective way to pick up evaluation marks. Obviously the main evaluation marks in year 16 are going to be for your conclusion, but it's 16 marks and above. So, and you'll know this if you've been through the Grade Booster videos and worked examples. Evaluating as you go is a good technique, as we'll see. So Bino's asking, should we use peak and pie for 16 mark questions? I would. You don't have to, but all peak and pie is a well explained relevant point in context with a sentence of evaluation drawing back to the key evaluation hook in the 16 mark question. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You could just leave all your evaluation to the conclusion. So there's no particular prescribed way of answering these questions. Mawad is asking, could you evaluate at the end of the paragraph by saying this depends on? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it depends on could be included in your pie sentence, as we'll see in a second. Okay, right, I think we're good to go. I'll try to pick up questions as we go, but I thought what we'd do is we'd just have a look through 3 mini case studies and actually unpick 3 possible 16 mark open questions, as I say, on exchange rates, performance related pay and outsourcing. So here's our first one. Now you may have seen some of these case studies before, you may not, don't worry, because I've written some new questions for them. So, and don't forget this session is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it as many times as you like, or not at all, once it's finished. And I'll also link to this PowerPoint on the TutorDue site. Okay. Alfie, I'll come back to that point at the end. In fact, what I will do is I will favourite that question, because that's a really useful one to come to at the end, if that's okay. So anyway, on the screen there, maybe have a look through it. I'll read through the case studies with you, but maybe have a think about what's in here. Don't forget, we always want to use the case study, don't we? They give us information and data for a purpose. And in this case, it's a business called Hellenic. Clue is in the name. It's a business that deals with suppliers in Greece. Hellenic is a wholesaler based in the UK. Hopefully you know what a wholesaler is. It buys things in and sells them onto retailers or other businesses. And what does it do? It imports high quality food from suppliers in Greece and sells them to restaurants in the UK who use these ingredients in their meals. Hellenic pays for its imports in euros. Hellenic's UK customers pay for their food supplies in pounds. And we're given some information there in the table that shows the average exchange rate for the pound to the euro between 2020 and 2021. So just a bit of information there to help us contextualize our 16 marker. Should we have a look at the question? Vanessa, that's a good question. So I'm going to add that to my favorites as well. I'm going to deal with all of these at the end, if that's all right. Okay, let's have a look at the question. Now, as always, please, we always ask you to unpick the demands of the question. Well worth spending half a minute, really thinking about what is the question asking, what do I need to focus on? because if you do that, it means you write less, but you also focus on the question, which generally means much higher marks. So here we go. Hellenic's profits depend partly on exchange rate changes. To what extent do you think, I should say, to what extent do you think that the profits of all businesses will benefit from the appreciation of the exchange rate? So what is this question about? Well, I've given you a clue because I told you that one of the 3 topics we're doing today is exchange rates. So it's about exchange rates. Where do our arguments need to get to? What do you think? I'm going to pick up a lot of these questions coming in terms of structure as we go. Alicia, we may actually cover that as we go through this answer here. So what's the end point? Hopefully you're familiar with this idea of unpicking the question. Who wants to type that into live chat? What's the end point? The start point is indeed, as Sochi's pointed out, exchange rates. The end point is profits. So that's all we need to focus on in terms of our arguments. We know that it's a 16-mark question. So therefore, we know that we need some balance to our arguments, and we need a judgment that answers the evaluation hook and is supported by the arguments, but the judgment is also balanced. So it's just a usual conclusion. And in particular, we have to focus on the wording of the question. So our response needs to focus on in what situations would it be the case that a business would benefit from an appreciation of the exchange rate? Not a depreciation, but a stronger exchange rate. That's all we need to focus on. Tali's asking how many paragraphs for a 16 marker. Well, my efficiency recommendation here is 2 paragraphs on the conclusion, but there's no requirement to do 2 plus a conclusion. You can do as many paragraphs as you want, but the chances are if you do more than that, you're going to be not writing at the right depth, or you're writing too much, or drifting from the question and wasting time. Okay, so what do we think? How would we unpick this question? Well, with all of these 16 markers, the same plan works. If you stick to this plan, it's going to give you some comfort in the exam because you know that you're going to be focused on the question. So with this one, we argue, we take the case study first. It's an open question, so we would argue why Hellenic, in this case, their profits would benefit from an appreciation of the exchange rate. So we just deal with Hellenic. Then we forget all about Hellenic, and we try to think of other situations where businesses wouldn't benefit from the appreciation of a currency. And then we know what the conclusion is, because we know that in some situations they will, and in some situations they won't. So in a way, the conclusion takes care of itself. But the most important thing there is explaining to the examiner how it would be the case for Hellenic, the case study business, and then moving to a different situation to make the counter argument, if we get the idea. James has very kindly put into the live chat the anagram spiced. Stronger pound, i.e. an appreciation of the exchange rate. Imports cheaper, I see. Exports dearer. And therein lies the clue to one of the answers to this question. Businesses that might benefit from a stronger pound are where your imports are cheaper. Now, let's have a look at I'll take you through an argument for Hellenic, and I'm going to pass it over to you and ask you to think about a counter argument. So let's just go through a suggested answer to this. Nima's also reminding people what SPICED means. It's a really useful acronym, isn't it? So I'm going to take you through an example paragraph for Hellenic that makes the case why they would benefit. And then I'll ask you to think about some situations where businesses might not benefit. Okay, so here we go. Hellenic's profits will benefit from a stronger exchange rate between the pound and euro. Didn't have to write that. I did. Because its variable costs are basically determined by the exchange rate. So this is an example of pecan. Up to that first point, we just write one sentence. That's it. We state the point we're going to develop. Don't include any application in that first sentence before the first full stop. Because if you do, the application doesn't count, because it becomes part of the point that you're going to explain. So make that first full stop important. That's the point you're going to develop. Then you can start to do a bit of analysis in context. So here we go. And Roxanne, superbly, I'll just stick it on screen actually here. This is fantastic, has basically answered the question. There it is. Businesses who import will benefit as costs will be less. So Hellenic will benefit as they import goods from Greece. Superb stuff. And that is my point, and all I've done is just developed it in context. So let's read through it. Since all of Hellenic's supplies are imported from Greece, Roxanne's point, and Hellenic pays its suppliers in euros, importantly, then the variable costs of items such as olives and cheese will be directly affected by a change in the exchange rate of the pound to the euro. Table 1 indicates that the pound strengthened by 10% between 2021 and 2020. So I just manipulated the data there. Whereas Hellenic's average selling prices to the UK did not change. Therefore, Hellenic will have paid on average 10% less for its imported ingredients, which should improve the gross profit margin with UK customers. Assuming similar sales volumes, this is likely to also mean, so it doesn't say this will, this is likely to mean higher gross profit. And if fixed costs don't increase as much as gross profits, this should result in higher profits. So there we go. We've explained how and why an appreciation of the exchange rate will benefit the profits of Hellenic. You don't have to, but I've just included let me get it on screen. I've got 5 different devices here I'm using. Okay, I've included a slice of pie, a pie sentence, a bit of evaluation. You don't have to, but I think it's a good strategy for 16 marks and above to go back to the evaluation hook and just do a bit of an evaluation sentence. So for businesses like Hellenic, where costs are so closely linked to the exchange rate, an appreciation is highly likely to benefit profits, provided the cost benefits don't get passed on to customers. So there we go. That's a well-argued point in support of the argument. I've just highlighted in red there some examples of application. Don't forget, you may know this if you've been on the Grade Booster course, but you can still log on, by the way, and enroll on it. We look for 2 pieces of application, if we can, in each paragraph, just to make the point to the examiner that we are applying in context. So I've drawn out some of the situation. Hellenic imports from Greece and pays in euros. I've done a bit of data manipulation about how much the pound has strengthened compared with the euros. And I've also used our favourite application technique called such as seasoning, which is quite appropriate, isn't it, for Hellenic? So rather than just saying variable cost will be cheaper, say variable cost such as olives and cheese or milk or whatever it is. Grapes, as Harry was suggesting in live chat. Olives, cheese and grapes, because that roots the answer in the context of a business that imports food from Greece. There we go. What do you think to that? What do you think to that argument? Are you convinced by that argument? Do you think that basically meets the demands of the question? What do we think? I was pretty happy with that one. Having said that, I should be, because I wrote the case study. So now, Borja is asking, how is this linked to all businesses? Well, because what we now do is having dealt with the case study, we now think about other business situations where the profits would not benefit from an appreciation of the exchange rate. So over to you, whilst I take a little sip of tea. Can you put into the live chat some suggestions, please? Either situations, examples of businesses, industries, whatever it is, where actually profits aren't really that, well, certainly wouldn't benefit from an appreciation of the exchange rate. Over to you. Have a think. I'll try to put some examples of these in the live chat. I'll quickly scan them, but already looking at some of them, they look really good. Let's get apologies in advance. I won't be able to show everybody's response, but this will be a representative sample of the quality of the entries that we're getting into our live chat here. Obviously, if you're watching this in 5 months' time after the exam, it doesn't really matter to you, but the live chat is working really well. Stephen's picked up the fact that businesses that rely on exporting, it's bad news for their profits, isn't it? Because their exports are dearer, which means that they are less competitive, which means that they're likely to suffer a fall in demand, which in theory should reduce profits. Sochi has gone down a similar route. What else have we got here? Yeah, wholesalers who pay in pounds, not in euros. Actually, it has the opposite effect, doesn't it? Good stuff. Yeah, and I like this one from Harry. I think this is a cracking answer, actually. What about businesses that just don't have anything to do with exchange rates? You know, your local greengrocer. Well, actually, I would keep away from food because we've dealt with that in the case study. But I don't know, your hairdresser, your car dealer, really probably has no impact on either what they buy or what they where they sell to. The business that doesn't export is going to have no impact. So, as I was saying, businesses that don't import or don't export, really, might have indirect effects of changes in exchange rates. But that's economics. This is A-level business. So they are not going to be significantly affected. Excellent stuff. Thank you for those live chats. And what I will do is I'll pick one of those and write up the counter argument in the live and add it to the Grade Booster course, so you can see a fully worked example. So we get the idea, don't we? Shall we do another example now? We're going to move on to our second case study. So we're not going to work through all the full answers, but in my third one, I'm going to show you an example of a conclusion. But this one, I'd like to show you an example of a counter argument using an old business, a different business. But we need to get your thoughts on the case study first. So here's a new case study called Wolfpack, appropriately called Wolfpack, as you'll see in a second. So what does Wolfpack do? It operates a chain of estate agencies, agents that buy and sell houses and also manage property rentals. You might deal with an estate agent when you come to rent some college accommodation, university accommodation. Okay, so let's read through it. Each local agency employs sales agents who handle the sale of houses and manage rentals. What are we told? We're told the sales agents are currently each paid a salary of £20,000, okay, and a bonus of £5,000 if the annual profit target of the business is achieved. Okay, so that's useful information. Wolfpack are considering a change in how sales agents are paid to one that reflects individual performance. So it sounds like performance-related pay, doesn't it? The annual salary will fall to just £5,000. So alarm bells, you might be able to do some data manipulation there. And commission will be paid for each completed house sale or property rental. It's expected that top performing sales agents could earn up to £50,000 per year, and that they will be more motivated to identify and complete sales opportunities. Wow. Big change at Wolfpack. So over to you. Don't forget, in 16 markers, we deal with the case study first. So I need some help here because I've not thought about this. I've thought about the counter argument. We're going to think about the case study now. So first of all, let's unpick the question. So what's this about? What's that question about, please, in the live chat? Always spend 30 seconds thinking start point, end point, and then the wording of the question. That way you'll never drift. Every word you write after that is focused on the demands of the question, therefore is going to earn you marks. Victoria was first in this case, followed very closely by Nima and Ellen, correctly identifying that it is indeed, he says, grabbing the right device, performance-related pay. Superb stuff. And the end point? What's the end point? I know some of this is easy, but if you do it for every question, you'll never drift from the question. Yeah, in the live chat, it's about motivation, isn't it? Employee motivation. Don't forget, 16 marks and above, we need balance for our arguments and our judgment. Our judgment needs to be supported by our arguments. What do we have to focus on? There's one word. Oh, actually, there's two words that we have to focus on in our evaluation. Nice link between strategic drift and getting marks in AQA. I like that. Yeah, is it effective? So our evaluation has to consider constantly how effective it might be to improve motivation. Generally, questions about motivation are about improving it, not how can you make employees less motivated. Superb stuff. And don't forget, it's an all business question, so we need to consider not just the case study business, but other situations. Now, so what we would do for this is, and I'm going to ask you to do the first bit for me now, think about how you would argue how and why for Wolfpack, employee motivation will improve through the introduction of this performance-related pay. So maybe have to think about that now. I will then show you an argument against that, but using different situations. So I'll make the counter argument why performance-related pay may not be effective or the best way of or being effective in increasing motivation. And we know what the conclusion is. We already know what it is, don't we? So over to you. Have a think, and let's see if I can pick out a few. We'll do a minute or two on this. Let's see if I can pick out a few answers. I'm not asking for the full paragraph here, just the basic point that you would make. And Jennifer's actually picked up my counter argument, which I'm going to show you later. So we're looking for an argument that says, yes, it will be effective for Wolfpack. So we always deal with the case study first and always say how it is the case. It's the best way to... oh, Emily, on fire here. Great start. Well done. Yeah, a significant opportunity to earn lots more money, up to £50,000. So nice use of the case study. And you could do a bit of data manipulation and say from an average of £25,000, including bonus, up to 50,000, which is a 100% increase. So if you did that little calculation and mentioned it, that would be using data and manipulating data. But great, using the case study, and fantastic. You would link employees being much more motivated to perform themselves rather than being dragged down by anybody else in the team, and link it to Taylor. Good old Freddie Taylor, didn't he? He loved it, didn't he? He loved this idea of paying people based on performance. So if you could link in a bit of Taylor's theory there, that would be fantastic. So well done for that one. What else have we got here? Oh, some great answers coming through. Yeah, Abby's going down a similar route here. Let me just drag that across a bit so we can get the full contribution into the window. You're basically making the argument that it gives employees a real incentive to work hard. That is motivation, isn't it? An incentive to work harder, to do better. A question coming in the live chat. Is this GCSE Spanish? Don't think it is, actually. I might be wrong. Back to the case study. Oh, Davina, look at this. I mean, sorry, I'm not picking out everyone's because there are so many great examples coming in here. I've got Matthew's coming up shortly. Davina's making the point about performance-related pay in the case of Wolfpack. Don't forget, we only deal with Wolfpack in the first point. Would be improved. So that's using the case, using the stem of the question, by creating healthy competition, and then linking that to Taylor. So I think the way I would take that point, Davina, I think it's a really good one. Healthy competition sounds better than sort of dog eat dog, isn't it? And then you might explain how and why that might work in the estate agent office using the case study business. Yeah, Matthew's basically saying, look, in a sales-orientated business like estate agency, where you only survive if you make sales, you need incentives to make sales. That's what you need. Performance-related pay works really well in environments like estate agencies, where you need sales in order for the business to succeed, in order for people to thrive. It attracts a certain type of person, doesn't it? Superb stuff. I love it. Yeah, fantastic stuff. I can't put any more on the screen because I'm overwhelmed by how many good responses. So key point though is, for this one, just deal with how it would be the case for Wolfpack. Don't bring any other situations in. Just deal with Wolfpack in this argument. What you then do, having done that, is then go back to a different situation and make a counter argument. So I've had a go. What do you think to this? Let's read through it. So I would take any one of your great points and develop it for Wolfpack, how performance-related pay will improve motivation for them. And then I would then say, however, performance-related pay may not be effective in improving motivation in many other situations. So this is how you deal with the all businesses thing. It's not a trick question. I've seen somebody on an online video saying that AQA are trying to trick you. Complete nonsense. They're not trying to trick you at all. They're trying to encourage you to consider other situations where it wouldn't be the case. So what do we mean? Well, particularly where employees value non-financial methods. So let's have a look at the point. Non-financial methods such as job enrichment and empowerment can be just as effective as in improving motivation in many situations, provided, as Hertzberg argued, that a hygiene factor such as competitive pay is present. So quite a few of you said mention Hertzberg. You've got to have the hygiene sorted first, and once that's sorted, some employees may value more about how they are treated and recognised at work. That's just as important as being paid based on their performance. And indeed, such employees might be demotivated by financial incentives that encourage them to compete against one another. For example, a web designer might gain significant job satisfaction from working with a team on a complex project rather than needing a bonus for completing the job, or maybe a bonus being paid for the work that he or she does. Similarly, offering employees better salaries in return for more responsibility might improve motivation without the need to relate pay directly to performance. So all we've done there is just explain why performance-related pay may not necessarily be the most effective way, or may not be effective. And then a little pie sentence at the end. What do we think? I've just done actually I haven't highlighted the application in there, but there is a bit of application in there, such as job enrichment, empowerment, and then I've got my for example situation. Now there's a good example, isn't it? That little bit there. For example, a web designer. So if you don't have a specific example of how non-financial methods of motivation might improve motivation, don't worry about it. Make one up. Just make one up. I'd say, for example, a teacher is more likely to be motivated by the thanks and the gratitude that her students give her at the end of a long year. And that will motivate her to continue to work hard in her work rather than being paid for each grade that the school achieves. Yeah, it's just an example. It's just a made-up example of how non-financial methods might work. You don't have to have a specific example. You don't have to use real businesses or real examples. Hopefully that helps. What do we think? Just pick up a couple of questions here. We'll go back to the Hellenic one in a minute. But I think we explained that the stronger pound means they pay less to their suppliers. Therefore, the cost of the ingredients goes down. Therefore, they make more money. There we go. Davina's asking, could you speak about job design? Yeah, absolutely you could. Absolutely. Let's stick that on the screen there. That would be a great way, wouldn't it? And a lovely example there of that in action. So you can bring in Hackman and Oldham here to explain how and why. I mean, specifically motivation can be, and in particular performance-related pay, can be examined specifically in paper 2. But even if job design, which I don't think is examinable in paper 2, let me check that. Pretty sure it isn't, but I might be proved wrong. And indeed it's not. So you won't get a question on job design, Hackman and Oldham, but you can bring it into your answer. Of course you can, because it's a good example of how jobs can be organised to give people greater job satisfaction and make them more motivated, which aren't necessarily related to performance-related pay. And I love that example that you've put on screen there from Google. Superb stuff. Right, we have one last case study to have a look at whilst we are looking at this. And we are going to show in response to one or two people in the live chat, we are going to show you a conclusion in action. So here we go. And we're back to a case study I wrote about a week ago, didn't I? For paper 1. Hope that went well for you. And but I've gone back to a very handy case study, and I've just picked out certain bits of it. I've not included everything because I want to cover a topic which is examinable in paper 2 called outsourcing. So let's quickly read about the case study and then let's get into the question and we'll show you a conclusion. So HHL, as we know, I wish I just called it HH, operates a chain of hotels, lots of staff, lots of hotel rooms, and we're told about the business. But the most important thing here is the last 2 paragraphs here. HHL is rated the UK's worst hotel chain by a popular online consumer reviews website. Reviews submitted frequently comment on how old-fashioned and tired the hotels look, with worn carpets and broken room televisions. Management are considering outsourcing certain hotel services such as room cleaning and catering to specialist suppliers, which will result in a large number of redundancies. And don't forget, we were given some information in our case study, so it's on the screen there. This could be like not that it will be, but it could be like a paper 2 first case study where we've got 3 or 4 appendices. And in particular, the Appendix A, we were told some information about the results of surveys, what customers had said about or evaluated the quality of their hotel experience. And to be honest, it wasn't good news. I've actually taken that data from a real life business as well. I won't mention who it is. So here is our question on outsourcing. And I've given the game away there, haven't I? I've told you what the start point is. HHL is considering outsourcing some hotel services. To what extent is the use of outsourcing essential for any business that wants to be competitive? So the start point is outsourcing. What is the end point? Victoria, you were ahead of me by about 5 seconds there. It is about outsourcing. Where do our arguments need to get to? Where do we need to focus our arguments? Sochi's straight in there. Not for the first time. Quickly in there. It's about competitiveness. So that's all we need to focus on. How and why outsourcing might be essential for competitiveness or situations where it may not be. Okay, so don't forget, I know I'm repeating this, but under the pressure in paper 2 next week, it's worth remembering that 16 marks, we need an argument in favour, a counter argument, and then a conclusion. And we need to focus on this word essential. Is it essential for all businesses to be competitive? Now, what I've done, and as always, let's just quickly go through this. How do we answer this question? Great question. I'll add that to my favourites list, and we'll deal with that in a couple of minutes when we come back to your general questions about this strategy. Same plan. Deal with the case study first. In this case Handy Hotels. How it would be the case that outsourcing is essential for them to be competitive. Deal with that. Then forget all about Handy Hotels and move on to different situations where outsourcing is not essential to be competitive. And then our conclusion is, in some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. But as we'll see in a minute, I've had to go at a conclusion. So here is my argument. And I'm going to ask you to give me a counter argument, please. Here's my argument for HHL, why it is the case. George is asking, do you need an introduction? No, definitely not. Don't write an introduction to 16-mark questions. Definitely don't. Waste of time. You don't have enough time to write efficiently, so I wouldn't. It's fine if you're writing your 25 and 24 marker in paper 3, but waste of time in your 16 markers. So we wouldn't write an introduction to this. We will get straight into why outsourcing is essential for Handy Hotels. Jennifer saying, my teacher says we should define the keywords at least. Don't need to. You can if you want, absolutely fine, but you genuinely don't need to. You don't need to define outsourcing. There's no rule that says you can't do it, but it's not the efficient way to answer questions like this, because the examiner will see whether you know what outsourcing is by what you write in your arguments. And if you need to start with a definition to get your writing, fine, but maybe just write it somewhere else and then get into writing your answer to the question. So here's my argument for why it is the case for Handy Hotels, HHL. Outsourcing is likely to be essential because because HHL needs a solution to problems that are damaging its product and brand. So that's my argument. I'm going to say you need to outsource here because you've got some major issues that need fixing. And if you don't fix them, you're going to be even more uncompetitive. So let's read through it. In a service business like a hotel, see if you can spot the application as we go through this answer. In a service business like a hotel, if the different elements of the product don't meet the needs and wants of customers, then competitiveness suffers. For example, with HHL, hotel guests, first bit of application. Sorry, I shouldn't be telling you. I've asked you to spot the application. Hotel guests should at least expect their rooms to be clean and the food to be edible. Table 1 suggests that at least 75% of guests are unhappy with room cleanliness and even more dissatisfied with hotel food, such as room service and breakfast. So, outsourcing should enable HHL to improve the standard of two important parts of a hotel stay, since the suppliers are likely to operate to a higher, more consistent quality than HHL employees can. Even if outsourcing increases the overall costs of room cleaning and catering, this might enable HHL to charge a higher selling price or offer greater perceived value for the same selling price, thereby still increasing competitiveness. So for many businesses such as HHL, outsourcing certain services that require specialist expertise can be an important part of being competitive. What do we think? I think that addresses HHL. That says it's a good idea because you need it to be competitive. That's all we need to write. And wonderful Ajayi has spotted some of the application in there, including some wonderful such as seasoning. If you know what such as seasoning is, don't worry. Go back to the Grade Booster videos or go back to some of our previous videos on YouTube. It's just adding some context that roots this response in the situation, which is a hotel. And we've used there such as room service and breakfast, because that's what people have, isn't it, when they eat food in a hotel? Well, sometimes they do. I normally whip out to Starbucks or something, or Sainsbury's local if I'm staying in a hotel. So you get the idea. That is an argument in favour, isn't it? Okay, so Victoria's asking, I thought that the pie sentence had to challenge your analysis. No, the pie is there to support your judgment, support that point. It's not meant to be a counter-argument. It's meant to say, yeah, this is a really good argument. Here's an important point. So there we go. That's one argument. What do we think? What's the counter-argument there? What do we think? I'll come back to the judgment, but can you give me some counter-arguments, situations where outsourcing isn't essential to be competitive? Last little bit of work for you guys and girls. What have we got? I'm going to have a look through some great answers coming through here. Let's pick out Jennifer's here. I mean, I'm not picking out anyone in particular, but 2 or 3 have come through that have just caught my eye as being the source of a really good counter argument against the need to outsource. And basically, it's the classic argument about outsourcing is that it might be cheaper, but it might not be to the right standard or quality that you need, and therefore you could damage competitiveness. So there's a danger that you outsource to reduce costs, and that doesn't help competitiveness. So it's not essential, is it, if it goes wrong? That's a great argument. I love that one. What do we got here? Let's see. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit because there's a temptation just to add to the screen that the earliest items. Roxanne's looks like a good one. If businesses use outsourcing, it means they lose some control. Great point, over their business. And if the business they use to outsource is unreliable, this may affect the reputation of the business. Great example. Great argument. Now, what you'd need to do is to develop that, of course, as you would, with some context. So you might say, if you didn't have a specific example of how suppliers have damaged competitiveness, you might say, for example, outsourcing web hosting and systems hosting to a specialist supplier may reduce costs. However, if that web hosting business proves unreliable or is not able to host and look after customer details securely, that could and there is an issue that could seriously damage the reputation of the business and therefore damage competitiveness. So I've made an example up on the spot there, just to show you how you could make one up in the exam on Thursday to help season your application. Let's have a look at fascinating username, but looks like a really good answer. Outsourcing isn't essential. Because in many businesses, they produce their own products. How they do it is their USP. That's their source of competitive advantage. Why would you outsource things that are your USP? You wouldn't, would you? You'd keep hold of them. Superb stuff. We've got some great arguments coming through here. Reading through, and yeah, I like this from Matthew as well. I mean, some great comments coming through. Not all businesses have things that they need to outsource, have functions that matter that need outsourcing. So hotels do, don't they? Because they've got lots of different tasks. But other businesses, okay, they're using external suppliers, but they just use external suppliers. It's not like they're getting rid of a whole business activity in order to solve an issue or to reduce costs. Many businesses just don't have things to outsource. That's a great, and they're still competitive. So it's a great argument. Superb stuff. So I think we've got more than enough examples there in the live chat of some arguments that could be used as our counter argument. And of course, we need to come to our conclusion. And Beamol, amongst others, was asking, "Can we see a conclusion, please?" Well, here's my effort at a conclusion. I don't think it's perfect, but it tries to do a couple of things. First, it tries to reflect the arguments that support it. So all judgments should be supported by the analysis. It tries to answer the question at the start, so it uses the sort of the aging method, answer the question, justify it, but then bring in some counterbalance and some extra application. So let's have a look. Whilst for some businesses like HHL, outsourcing is likely to be vital to be competitive, this will not be the case in many other situations where competitiveness can be achieved without outsourcing. So we've answered the question, haven't we? Well, why is that the case? Well, because just about every business uses external suppliers, such as seasoning, providing office or factory space, financial advice. Every business uses suppliers, but it doesn't mean that you outsource them because you can't do them internally. And then another example there, for example, Amazon's competitiveness is to some extent dependent on logistics. However, it doesn't outsource all of its logistics to specialist providers. It also uses its own lorries, as well as firms like DPD and Royal Mail. So even for Amazon, they don't just outsource logistics because there's better people who can do it. They have a nice mix of external suppliers and doing it in-house. Now, of course, this balance outsourcing can be essential if there are key services that customers value which the firm can't deliver. However, if that's the case, that's a weakness in the business, isn't it? So you're better off trying to fix that weakness, perhaps, than always turning to outsourcing. Now, near the end of that paragraph, it was the end of that judgment. It's okay, but the judgment, you don't get marked for whether it's the right answer or not. You get marked for have you answered the question. And I think that judgment does a decent job. How many marks out of 16 would you give it? Having not seen my counter argument, but what do you think? Let's do a quick straw poll in the live chat as to how many out of 16 with that judgment and with that. 15, yeah, 15. Mariam, thank you very much. Annabelle's gone lower. 14. We haven't seen my counter argument, have we? But I would nick one of your excellent ones and just develop it, and I'll be assured of a good mark. Good stuff. Right, there we go. So what do we think? Hopefully that's useful. Let me know in the live chat if it is useful. A couple of questions which I've picked up from earlier on, which I'm just going to go through, and I'll try to pick up some more as we go. But the key thing about the 16-mark open questions is you've got to write efficiently. You do not have time to write loads of paragraphs. You've got to deal with the case study first, then forget all about it, deal with other situations in your counter-argument, and then forget all about them, and then write your conclusion referring to your two previous arguments. You've got to move on. You can't afford to hang around with these 16 markers. They're not 25-marker, half-an-hour jobs. They're 15-minute, 20 minutes, 15 minutes of writing max, having thought through the question. So efficiency, I think, is really, really important. And hopefully that helps answer Alfie's question. Can you cover how to time manage yourself in this paper? Well, in paper generally, in paper 2, you've basically got 3 case studies, haven't you? The first case study is going to have some appendices in it. So in theory, a little bit, well, not in theory, a little bit more time is required because you're going to have probably a couple of short calculations based on one or more of the appendices to do. Then you're probably going to have a 4-mark explain question based on the case study, and then probably a 6 and a 16-mark question to follow. So you need to make sure that you allocate a mark a minute. Looking at the advanced information in paper 2, QS8 is examinable this year, which is, I read it out, using data and information to make decisions. So that feels to me quite likely, no guarantees, but quite likely that that first 16-mark question is going to be a decision. You know, should the business do it or not, by reference to the data and the case study. And then the next two 16-mark questions are going to be open questions. So I think you've just got to mark a minute, but 16 markers are the biggest questions, and they're also the questions that most students struggle with. So make sure you leave enough time to do them. Hopefully that answers that question. And another one from Alfie, who's big on questions early doors in the session. How many points should you use for each paragraph? My teachers told me to do 2. 1 point per paragraph. That's always the efficient, effective way. 1 point well developed. That is a paragraph. End of. So, but it's 2 paragraphs plus the conclusion. I think we've dealt with Vanessa's question. Should we add a definition? You can if you want, but there's no requirement to. In fact, the examiners have said in the official examiners reports that students who write definitions, there's no need to, and they may well be not writing efficiently. It's better off to get straight into answering the question. A great question from Bianol here is, if we use the same structure for 16 and 25 marks, where you're not going to be using any more 25 markers, but a 24 marker in paper 3 coming up a week on Thursday, where do the extra marks come from? Extra marks. So a 24 marker in paper 3, the open question, more depth to your conclusion, basically. More depth to your 2 arguments. That's basically where they come from. Hopefully that answers that question. Let's just pick up any more questions coming in the live chat. Let me have a quick look. So give me a few seconds here to... that's interesting. My teacher told me a definition gives you a knowledge mark. Well, it might do, but it's not because of the definition. You get knowledge, you get marks. Don't forget, every one of your questions, 60 marks in particular, is marked holistically. It's the overall response, the quality of the response. Does it meet the demands of the question? And nominally, there are some marks for knowledge and understanding and application, analysis and evaluation. But there's no specific mark for knowledge that you win or earn from writing something. It's about what level does your response reach, and have you met the demands of the question, and how well you've met the demands. So there are no specific marks for knowledge in these questions. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you want to start with a definition, you certainly can be. Mariam's saying, we'll be uploading the questions we did on the work in the Grade Booster course. I need to work out which ones those are, actually, Mariam. I've been trying to upload videos on as many of them as possible. Jennifer's asking, will you do a live session on the lower mark questions? And is there maths questions in paper 2? Yeah, we will. So we're going to be we've just done a session on the 4 mark questions, haven't we? The 4 mark explain questions. We're going to do a calculation special for paper 2, because there are calculations or quantitative skills. So there are probably 2 short calculations in the first case study, and typically 1 short calculation in the next 2 case studies. But areas such as percentage changes, interpreting graphical forms, that, for example, that could include inventory control charts. So we'll cover that. And most importantly, absolute nailed on to be in paper 2 is PED and YED, price and income elasticity of demand, interpretation and application of coefficients. So we'll do those in a calculation special, and also in the warm-up. We'll do a warm-up on a Wednesday night. Let's have a look. Zachary, would you advise doing the questions as they appear in order, or more methodically? I would methodically do the questions in order, absolutely, all day long, because that's why they're set in that way. How long should we spend annotating and calculating from the case study? Just a minute or 2. I would look at the questions first, and then go back to the case study. See what the questions are that they're asking you, and then go back to the case study. Binal, are there any open 9 markers in paper 2? No. Because an open question is by definition an evaluative question, and the analyse stem for 9 markers is not evaluative. So the open questions would be 16 marks and above. So there are 9 markers, of course, aren't there? At least 2 in paper 2, and we apply our usual technique to the analyse questions, which hopefully you've seen in previous sessions. Ollie's saying, messed up paper 1. Well, Ollie, you don't know that, do you? You don't know that, to be fair. You might think you've done, but a lot of people who think they've messed up a paper actually have done really well. And it could be that you think, I didn't write enough, or I didn't write loads, and everybody else is saying how much they wrote. It's not about how much you write, it's about what you write. So, but anyway, of course it's possible. Generally, paper 2 is, on average, I think it's the best paper, on average, is the best score. Paper 3, on average, is the lowest. Often it's because students are tired, because they run out of time. But you can absolutely, every mark counts. So hopefully you will come out flying in paper 2 and paper 3. A few more questions. I've got a few more minutes here. Sasha's asking, can you provide some more open questions? Yeah, I will do. I mean, what I've done is I've just uploaded for Handy Hotels. I've written 4 open questions, just uploaded those. We've got a case study business called JW Bakery. I've uploaded some open questions, 16 markers for those. There's another case study on there called Friendly Foods. That's also got some open 16 marks. So hopefully plenty more for you to have a go at on the Grade Booster downloads. Good question from Alex. The best business to reference in the open question? Well, the answer is it depends what the situation is, isn't it? But I tend to use either specific businesses that I know I can apply in many situations, like Apple, Amazon, Aldi, or, and I think this is more useful, industries, markets, fast fashion industry, supermarket retailing, car manufacturing, which I know time and time again are useful ways of bringing in examples. So I would be, I'd just have the more you practice, the more you practice planning questions, the more you come up with your favourites that you always end up using in an exam. The examiner doesn't have a list of examples they're expecting or industry they're expecting. They have no idea what you're going to write, as long as it's relevant to the question. I'm not going to comment on what you may or may not have done in paper 1, because that's between you and the examiners, and it's not just one person who marks your paper. It's a variety of people who pick up the questions that you answered. I don't have mark schemes for all the open questions. Mark schemes take a long time to write. So what I was thinking, Dilpreet, I'll just put your question on screen there. I was thinking you'd rather have more case studies and questions to unpick and think about, rather than me spend weeks and weeks trying to write a few more mark schemes for particular questions. What else have we got here? Are there any more questions? I think I've dealt with quite a few there. Hopefully it's been useful. If it has, please let me know. Davin is asking about chapter 7.5. Oh, section 7.5. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about, let's just stick that in there. Oh, you're asking how it's going to be questioned. Well, the answer is we don't know, do we? It could be anything, couldn't it? 3.7 is a big old part of the specification. And if we have a look at our... Can't see it? Yeah, if you have a look at our topic by topic, paper by paper breakdown of the advanced information in paper 2, of course, 3.75 stands out, doesn't it, as being the only bit of the spec that can be examined. You've got the different parts of the economic environment, exchange rates. There's no reason at all why inflation couldn't come up. In fact, I don't think inflation's ever been examined, so we're going to definitely do that in our warm-up. But don't forget, you've also got open trade, protectionism and globalization, which again emerging markets hasn't really been examined at all so far, so you can't really ignore any of that. It could be any part of that, or indeed 2 parts of it in the same case study. Ellen's asking a specific point about these pi sentences. Yeah, it doesn't. The evaluation sentence doesn't have to justify and back up your point in terms of evaluation. It can be, and it depends on point. As long as it's a bit of evaluation, and as long as it doesn't start developing a counter argument, I think that's That's absolutely fine. Use of it depends is a very effective way of doing that. So hopefully that answers your question, Ellen. Gracie, yeah, I'll try to include some more 3.7.5 questions in the next session. We'll try to think, could calculations come up? You could be asked to interpret some economic data, couldn't you, in a chart or table? So we could do that. I need to work out when the next session is. I'm pretty sure we've got one coming up. Is it on Sunday? Definitely Monday. I think it's Monday. And then we're going to do a warm-up the night before. There we go. Look, I think we've been going an hour. How's that? I think that's about right, isn't it? About an hour. You lot need to enjoy your Jubilee Bank holiday if you've not already been enjoying it, and put your feet up for a while. And you've worked really hard. So I'm going to sign off now. And first of all, thank everyone who's joined me live for this session, and in particular for everyone who's typed in some great responses into the live chat. It's been made my life really easy, and also very encouraged to see how you've engaged with those 3 case studies. I'm not saying whether exchange rates, performance-related pay and outsourcing will come up in the paper. I've no idea, but we know they could do. But there are lots of other topic areas that could come up. It's more about the technique with 16 mark open questions. So hopefully that's been useful. If it has, as always, give it a like on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get an alert once we have added in the details of the upcoming sessions. If you think we've done a lot so far, just wait till you see what we're going to do for paper 3. But anyway, look, your time is precious. I'll let you go. Thanks for joining me, and look forward to catching you on the next live stream. Thanks, everyone.